Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Sonia McGowan with Covenant Pediatric Wellness Center here for our monthly webinar. And so today we're going to be talking about food allergies and sensitivities and how the gut and brain connection can impact behavior and sleep and poops and all the things with complex kids. So most of you probably know me or know of me, but just a quick little introduction. So I'm married to Shannon. He is a CPA. He's recently retired. We've been together, seems like forever, and it's wonderful. We have our two kiddos. It's a newly empty nest, but we have Libby, who is just turned 22 on Friday. She lives in Kansas City. She's a musician. She is the music director for the School of Rock program in Overland Park. And this is Rowan. He just left yesterday to go back to college. He's a junior at Millikan University. He is a theater costume design major. And I always include this picture because, I've worked with complex kids and adults for a really long time. But when I had Rowan, he had a lot of challenges when he was little. He did not sleep. He had horrible poops. He was covered in eczema, lots of sensory issues. And it felt like no matter where I took him to get help, no one knew what to do. I mean, it was, I took him to naturopaths and I took him to medical doctors. I took him to chiropractors, and everybody said things like, he was nonverbal till he was 4. And they would say things like, "You're a helicopter mom. He has an older sister." Like, it was just the dumbest stuff. And so it was really frustrating for me. And so that really is the reason that I have built Covenant to be the way it is, because I just felt unheard and I felt lonely. And I felt like, my kid would do great if he got the right kind of help. And he did. And so I just strive to make Covenant the place that I needed when he was little. And then this is Ozzy. This is when he graduated from puppy school. He's our sheepadoodle. He's now almost 2. He's a big boy now, so I need to update that picture. But he keeps our nest from being totally empty. So we do a lot of things here at Covenant. Really, my passion is kids with complex needs. It used to just be kids with autism, but things have evolved so much over the last years that I really changed the language to complex kids, because, it's not just autism anymore. We have kids, with lots of challenges. And so I want to just make sure that we're here to address all of that. So we really specialize in biomedical interventions, neurodevelopmental exams, neuro-focused chiropractic. We also have a pediatrician on staff. And so she's taking new patients all the time. She has some experience with complex kids. And then, of course, she's a general pediatrician. And we are basically the only practice in town who is flexible about the things that babies get on a regular basis, if you know what I mean. We also do a lot of work around oral restrictions, so tongue ties, lip ties, etc. And then we have our early beginnings program, which is prenatal and pediatric chiropractic. So we also see adults. We have chiropractors on staff now who also see adults. So even though our name says pediatric, we do see adults as well for chiropractic. So when I talk about complex kids, what do I mean? I mean a lot of things. So like I said, it started out with just autism, but now we're talking about kids with PANS and PANDAS, kids with behavior, language, or socialization challenges, sensory processing issues, kids who may have been identified as ADD or ADHD, retained primitive reflexes, kids with oral restrictions, and then just what I call square peg round hole kids. So these are kids who don't necessarily have a diagnosis, but they're struggling. Maybe they're struggling socially, maybe they're constipated, maybe they have, poor sleep, maybe they are selective eaters, right? So things just aren't coming along quite the way that parents expect them to, and they need some support. And we're happy to help those kids as well. And so at Covenant, we believe that there are no bad kids and there are no purposeless behaviors. So we're always looking for the why behind symptoms, always. we don't believe in Band-Aids here. We believe in getting to the root cause of the problem. And so when we talk about food and the gut-brain connection, why do we care? Well, food can be either medicine or poison. Diet is a very powerful intervention, and food allergies and food sensitivities can affect behavior, immune function, digestion, sleep, skin, etc. And so we do a lot of testing here. I like to test, not guess. There are some kids who we can't manage to do testing on, and I will use my clinical judgment in those cases. But I feel, what I see every day clinically is that when we have the data specific to that child and we can intervene based on those results, kids get better so much faster. Many symptoms seen in complex kids nearly always have a physical or metabolic basis. We need to look for the root cause, again, like I said. And so generally, some of the things that I see are intestinal problems. And when we get that fixed, kids look so much better. All right. So there's always families asking me, okay, you talk about allergies, you talk about sensitivities. What's the difference? So food allergies trigger an immune system response. The body thinks that food is a threat and it releases chemicals against that food. So the chemicals can be histamines, they can be different neurotransmitters and different chemical messengers. Usually there's immediate symptoms. So the classic thing you think about, if someone is allergic to shellfish and they have shrimp, they know immediately, right? Their tongue tingles or feels funny, their lips swell, their throat swells, right? For some people, their eyes will swell, they'll get hives right away. So generally it's immediate symptoms, but not always. I do allergy testing with lots of people and they'll come up, say, with a dairy allergy. And they'll say, that really surprises me because I don't get immediate symptoms. And it's because the body's really smart, right? We know the body knows how to compensate and kind of work around that problem. What will happen though, in almost every case is, let's say it is a dairy allergy. The person goes dairy free for a period of time. And then either they accidentally get dairy or they just make a choice. Hey, I want, ice cream tonight. I'm going to suffer the consequences. And that's when they'll have the immediate response. So they'll get hives or they'll get vomiting or diarrhea or, maybe swelling around the face and throat. So usually immediate symptoms. Symptoms are generally skin reactions like eczema, hives, other kinds of rashes. Sometimes it's respiratory issues like wheezing, shortness of breath. Sometimes it's GI distress. So people will, get an upset stomach, they'll vomit, they'll have diarrhea. And sometimes it goes all the way to anaphylaxis where the tongue swells, the throat swells, and maybe eyes swell shut as well. All right, so that was allergies. Let's talk about sensitivities. You may also hear them called food intolerances. These do not involve the immune system. This is a digestive problem. So generally it can be things like maybe the person doesn't have adequate digestive enzymes to break their food down. Really, really common in complex kids. I would say probably 75% of kids we test come up short on digestive enzymes. And when that happens, it means that there aren't enough enzymes in the saliva, from the stomach, from the pancreas, et cetera, to adequately break that food down. When you don't break the food down as it passes through your system, you can't access those nutrients, and it ends up creating food sensitivities. Sometimes it's reactions to food additives and food dyes. Those chemicals just don't set well with the body and create issues around sensitivities. Symptoms generally are delayed, and that's what makes sensitivities a challenge, because it can take up to 3 days from the time of the exposure to that food until they have a symptom. And the symptoms can be kind of hard to track too, right? So it could be things like a bellyache, it could be a headache, it could be, abdominal bloating, it could be behavioral issues like sleep disruption, like irritability, hyperactivity, For a lot of kids, it shows as being non-compliant or defiant. And so you can imagine if it can take up to 3 days to show a response, that's really hard for parents to track because, let's say it was a red food dye and it takes, 24, 48, 72 hours for any of these things to show up. It's hard to track that back. All right. So, again, symptoms could be bloating, abdominal pain, headache, fatigue, sleep disruptions. Constipation is a big one. Whereas with allergies, it tends to be more diarrhea, vomiting. But we will see things like gas, sometimes diarrhea, lots of, just digestive things in general. I also see a lot of skin issues with this. So I see rashes, I see dry skin, I see what we call the keratosis pilaris, those kind of chicken skin bumps on often on the backs of the arms, but sometimes other places too. And there are certain, skin manifestations that always lead me to certain things. So for example, if there's like a rash or roughness at the front of the knees or on the backs of the knees, I'm always thinking gluten every time, right? A gluten intolerance. So there are just some physical exam things that I always look for that kind of help me figure that out. All right. Diane. Hi, Diane. She's asking, why does the body not naturally produce enough digestive enzymes? That is a great question. And I'm not really sure I can answer that. I think some of it could be due to nutrient deficiencies, which, then creates kind of this vicious cycle. I really am not entirely sure of that answer, but I can tell you it's pervasive. Even across adults, I generally see that people just have super weak digestion. All right. So other symptoms could be joint pain, brain fog, and again, with the behavior things like sleep disturbances, irritability, tantrums, spaciness, brain fog kind of thing. And sometimes we'll even see a loss of skills or a reduction in their skills like language. So, kids get kind of spacey. They can't seem to find their words. Really, really common in complex kids. All right. So just a summary, allergies versus sensitivities. Allergies, immune system response, the reaction generally is immediate. Often the reactions are severe. With sensitivities, it's a gastrointestinal response, not an immune response, delayed up to 3 days and often chronic. And it's really the sensitivities that I think the testing helps illuminate the best. Allergies, that's very important, but it's the sensitivities, in my opinion, for complex kids that can be the most insidious. They can have the most behavioral, sleep and poop effects on kids. So let's go through some common allergens in complex kids. So by far, number one, gluten. Absolutely, gluten. Gluten is in wheat, barley, and rye. It can be in other things due to exposure. So if, something is processed in a plant that also has gluten, then it might be cross-contaminated. So you'll often see like boxes of oats that say gluten-free. Well, oats are naturally gluten-free, but sometimes you have that cross-contamination in the factory. So gluten creates an opioid reaction. So it fits in your brain the same way an opioid drug would. And so you can have a variety of symptoms when you have a gluten allergy. So things like craving gluten. I can't tell you the number of families who have told me over the years, I will ask things like, if your kid had no boundaries or rules, what would they eat? And families will say, oh, he would eat a loaf of bread in a day if I would let him, for example. So lots of carb cravings, lots of cravings for things with gluten in them. And kids are really smart. So I've known kids who have gone gluten-free and they have suddenly found other sources of gluten, like, for example, envelope glue or chapstick. And so we'll find kids, licking envelopes just to get a gluten fix, for example. We often see a lot of physical symptoms like ear infections, colic, eczema, and then a lot of GI symptoms like constipation and diarrhea. Kids with autism are notably, it's very common for us to see both constipation and diarrhea in the same child. They often will alternate. And so that can also be related to gluten as well. We will see behavioral symptoms like compulsive behavior, self-stimulatory behavior. Often we'll see a high pain tolerance. And think about that, right? It creates an opioid reaction. And so it's going to be like an opioid drug. Behavior is constant, not cyclical or sporadic. And then dairy. Dairy is on the top of the list as well. So this is anything from a cow. So if it has milk in it, it's going to be dairy. So ice cream, cream cheese, sour cream, etc. So not just the milk. And understand that eggs are not dairy. Eggs are sold in the dairy section, but they are not dairy. Okay, that's a separate thing. So the symptoms are similar to gluten. We'll see cravings, we'll see the physical symptoms, we'll see the GI symptoms. We'll also see behavioral issues like, again, the compulsive behavior, self-stim behavior, the high pain tolerance. Behavior, again, is constant, not cyclical. And keep in mind that if there's no allergy finding, often milk is just highly inflammatory for kids, especially the way our milk is so commercialized now. It definitely has different nutrients and constituents than milk straight from a cow. We also see lots of kids who have egg allergies, soy allergies, corn, and then also some nuts and legumes. So when we talk about common sensitivities, it's a lot of the same players, right? So it's gluten and dairy, it's corn and soy very frequently, but also we're pulling in some other things like food dyes. I just did a Facebook Live with Kendall Duncan last week about her experience with her child and food dyes. So the one you hear the most commonly is red 40, but really all the dyes can be a culprit. These are made from petroleum products. Not really sure why anyone ever thought it was safe to put that in our food, but for many kids, food dyes create major behavioral issues, lots of physical issues. We also are very responsive to food preservatives. So things like BHA, BHT, TBHQ. If you were to Google those three additives, you would probably be enraged that any of that is in your food. We have a lot of kids who are very sensitive to artificial sweeteners. So things like aspartame, sucralose, NutraSweet, anything like that, it's a chemical. And although it tastes sweet, when it comes right down to it, there's no glucose around that, right? And so often what you'll find is a lot of weight gain when people have a lot of artificial sweeteners. And then it causes things like headaches, stomach upset, and a lot of behavioral issues as well. And then flavor enhancers are a big one. So things like MSG. My son had a terrible MSG allergy when he was, I don't know, probably third, fourth grade. He was diagnosed with abdominal migraines. And, we were frequently in the ER thinking he had appendicitis because his belly would hurt so terribly. And after a long, long road, we figured out it was actually an allergy to MSG. Once we removed all MSG from his diet, all of those abdominal migraines went away. And once we started using the Ion Cleanse foot bath on a regular basis, eventually that MSG allergy / sensitivity went away. So he can have that with no problem now. All right, salicylates are another common thing that our kids are sensitive to. Salicylates can be in artificial additives and preservatives, but also they're naturally occurring in certain fruits and vegetables. So I guess mostly fruits. So grapes, berries, anything brightly colored tends to have salicylates in them. And so if a child is sensitive to salicylates, what we'll see are very specific symptoms. So we often see where their cheeks and ears get very red, and not because they're outside playing and they're hot, right? They're just red all the time. We'll see a lot of regressions We'll see loss of skills, language skills, behavior skills, self-help skills. We also see a lot of aggression. We see kids who get giddy. They get kind of silly, kind of drunk, acting like they're high, basically. A lot of kids will tell us they have headaches. We'll see self-stimulatory behavior, hyperactivity. And unlike the gluten and dairy, where behavior is constant, not cyclical, with salicylates, we see swings in behavior. So we're fine, we're not fine. We're fine, we're not fine. So salicylates can be a big deal for a lot of our kids. Oxalates as well. So oxalates are crystals that would give you or I a kidney stone or a bladder or a tonsil stone. In complex kids, those crystals tend to just settle in certain tissues of the body. Oxalates come from a couple of different places. They come from intestinal yeast. Our kids are notorious for having high intestinal yeast. And so I'm really looking for those to correlate on the tests that I do. We also see oxalates in certain foods. So things like, green things like kale, spinach, certain beans, certain nuts, some fruits, some grains. But these are generally not foods that our kids are eating tons of, right? Many of our kids are pretty selective eaters. And so they're not, having plates of kale, right? Or lots of beans, things like that. So generally I'm looking to correlate intestinal yeast with oxalates, but complex kids, particularly kids on the spectrum, tend to have 3 times greater oxalate levels than their peers. And so this is really important because oxalates can cause frequent urination. Bedwetting is another big one. We'll often see kids who have belly pain after they eat. We'll see that they'll regress in their skills when they've had a meal with a lot of oxalates or a meal that really feeds yeast. We'll see eye poking, genital probing, and the dead giveaway here is stools that look sandy. Okay, so that's a dead giveaway for oxalates. And so complex kids are vulnerable, right? They just seem to be magnets for difficult things. And so part of the issue is many of our kids are experiencing pretty significant nutrient deficiencies. This is something that I test consistently with complex kids and often, adults who come to me as well. So sometimes their deficiencies are because they're selective eaters, right? Sometimes their deficiencies are because they are weak digesters. They don't have enough enzymes. They're just not good at digesting their food. And for some kids, they have deficiencies because they have malabsorption, right? So their intestine is permeable. It's leaking out their nutrients instead of going where they need to go. Sometimes it's all three, right? They're selective eaters. They're not great digesters. They have malabsorption. And so when you've got significant nutrient deficiencies, like most of our kids do, it leads into mitochondrial dysfunction. So the mitochondria are an organelle inside our cells that make energy, right? So the main job of eating is to turn that food into energy, ATP, glucose, right? And so when a child has nutrient deficiencies, when they have pathogens, it can very dramatically impact their mitochondrial function. Think about this like gas in the car. If you have no gas in your car, you can have a perfectly fine car, but it's not going to turn on, right? You can't turn on the radio. You can't use the windshield wipers. And the body is the same in that if you're not making ATP, you can't have, for example, good immune function. You can't have robust digestion. You can't have good detox pathways, right? And that's what we see in these kids is that exact pattern. So to figure this out, some strategies. You definitely want to keep a food diary and make note of, this food, this is the reaction that the child had. It can be really difficult to just keep it in your memory because sometimes behavior is subtle and you're busy. You're wrangling kids, you're running a household, right? So just keeping a food diary is really helpful. You can always try an elimination diet. So you can say, okay, for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, we're going to go dairy free and see how it goes. If families just want to jump in with an elimination diet, I always tell them to get rid of dairy first. Dairy leaves the system faster than most things, right? Pretty quick. So you're going to see a response pretty quickly as well. Whereas gluten takes weeks or sometimes months for those food proteins to leave the system. So, if you're worried about this, kind of think about what I've already talked about in terms of patterns of behavior, and specific symptoms so that maybe you can dial in on what should be eliminated first. My best advice is to test, don't guess, right? So if we can just test it and know it and use that data to strategize about what's next, makes the most sense. So in terms of the best tests, there are lots of options available. Prices vary depending on the number of foods that are tested. Allergies always require a blood draw. That's just the way it is. But sensitivities can be done in other ways. So that can be a blood draw. It can also be a blood spot where you just prick the finger and gather blood from that finger stick. I tend to use a test called the P88. It is from Precision Point Diagnostics. It's also called their dietary antigen test. So it's a blood draw. It looks at allergies and sensitivities to nearly 100 foods, including some spices, including gluten, dairy, all of that. It gives allergies and sensitivities to all of those foods, but it also tells us if that food is an inflammatory food, which I really like because sometimes it's not an allergy, it's not a sensitivity, but the body just doesn't love it and it creates inflammation. So you get 3 really good data points on lots of different foods for that test. We can do a sensitivity scan, which is bioresonance. It is hair and saliva. It is sensitivities only because remember, you have to have blood to look at allergies. So lots of other labs do food allergy and sensitivity testing. It really just kind of depends on, how many foods you're looking at, what your budget is, et cetera. There are, several labs who do very small panels of, 20 foods or 10 foods. It just really depends on what you're looking for. What I have found working with complex kids forever is often they don't have the classic reactions that maybe you and I would, that would give us a clue that they're having an allergy or a sensitivity. So I like to just cast a wide net, right? So use the test that gives us the most data that we can work with. The more data we have from the outset, the better plan that we can make. So here is an example of that P88 dietary antigen test that I mentioned from Precision Point Diagnostics. So what you see here on the left are the different foods, and this is a multiple page report. So this is only just a little snippet of it. But what you see here is the food on the left, and then this is the allergy column. So we have IgE and IgG4. And then over here, we have sensitivity with the IgG. And then this is the inflammatory marker, the C3D. And so what you can see here is the box can be empty, meaning there's no reaction. It can say low, moderate, or what's missing here is a red box that says high or severe. And so what I generally tell families is we care about when it says moderate or severe. But what I like to pay attention to too is if you kind of zoom out from this, what you'll see is under the IgE and IgG columns, nearly every column says something, right? Most of it says low. And so right away, just looking at this, knowing nothing else, what I know about this child is that they have poor intestinal health. They probably have intestinal permeability. They probably have a lot of inflammatory and immunological markers specific to their intestines. So before we get too busy with food elimination, we're going to need to definitely work on intestinal health. All right. So To close up for today, what a child eats matters. What adults eat matters, right? It's not easy to change a child's diet, but it generally brings really, really big gains. I would say for most every kid, it would be worth it to have a look at what's going on in terms of food allergies, sensitivities, inflammation, because, inflammation drives most disease. I find that inflammation drives many behaviors in our kids as well. So if you're doing all the right things and you're still not getting quite the results that you're looking for, look at diet, look at what they're eating, make sure that there's no artificial sweeteners, make sure there are no artificial dyes, make sure there's no flavor enhancers like MSG. And, if it seems to fit, think about eliminating dairy, think about eliminating gluten, or coming to us for testing, or anywhere. It doesn't have to be us, but we're kind of good at this. So if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the Q&A box on the sidebar. And while you're doing that, just a reminder that we do a webinar every single month on a different topic related to complex kids. And so in September, on September 19th, will be our next webinar. I'm thinking the topic is going to be MCAS. Maybe. We'll see. I'm still usually I have my whole year planned, but, life gets away with you. So we're also having a Facebook Live with Courtney Wells. She is a mom of 4 amazing kids, one on the spectrum, and we're just going to be talking about her son's healing journey, and that is going to happen on Monday, September 15th. So if you're interested in learning more about what we're doing for her kiddos, you'll definitely want to hear about this. So Diane says, addressing and improving poor intestinal health can turn the sensitivities around. Absolutely. So what we will often see is we do a food allergy and sensitivity test. We clean up the diet. We work on intestinal health. And when we give it a few months, we retest often, many of those sensitivities go away, which is encouraging because, it's hard to limit what you eat. Do I have a webinar on detox pathways? I'm not sure that I do, honestly. That would be a good one. That's a great idea. For those people who are interested in looking or watching any of my other webinars from the past, I'm going to put the website here. It's called thewhymatters.net. And if you navigate to the top, you'll find a tab that says webinars. And then you can scroll down and watch a couple years worth of webinars that I've done over the last couple years. So always on a topic like this. There are some repetitive topics because, as I learn more, I share more. But I do this every month. We also release 2 blog posts a month. You can find those at the same website, but just navigate to the blog section. And I think this month I did a blog on mold, 2 different topics around mold. So how mycotoxins trigger a certain type of inflammation in kids, and then the link between mycotoxins, mold, and cerebral folate deficiency in kids. So Diane says, how can one improve the efficiency of detox pathways? Number 1, we've got to get mitochondrial function on board. That's a mistake a lot of people make is they hear talk about detox, and detox is absolutely critical, but you've got to do it in the right order. So for example, people will get excited and maybe they'll get an ion cleanse foot bath, for example, one of my absolute favorite tools done in the right order. So if you start with an aggressive or even a moderately aggressive detox situation, without knowing what your mitochondrial function is, you risk yourself or your kid getting worse because, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And if you're not having gas in the car, you can't force yourself to detoxify. So a lot of kids, if we push it and go in the wrong direction or wrong order too fast, kids will get worse before they get better. So definitely working on mitochondrial function. The other thing is sweating, breathing hard, right? So exercise would be good. I love the ion cleanse foot bath. For more information on that, you can go to their website, amajordifference.com, and you can get lots of information about the ion cleanse. It is the only foot bath that I endorse. A $200 foot bath from Amazon is not going to help you, right? It has to be medical grade equipment, has to be a clean current, all of that. So, so lots of water, exercise, sweating. I also really like far infrared saunas. I think those are fantastic. But you've got to set your system up to be able to detox using those strategies. And Gina, hi Gina, asks, do we test for mold and mycotoxins? We can test for mycotoxins in the system. It is a urine test that gives, it's a several page report. And so it tells all the different mycotoxins like ochratoxin A, citrinin, et cetera. And it will tell us exactly where you are in that continuum. And so if we find that you have high mycotoxins, we have strategies to help you with that. So yeah, we definitely do that. That test is about 325, I think. Again, it's first morning urine. You freeze it, send it off. I get results. It's pretty straightforward, very accurate. And our interventions are really successful as well. So the trick about mycotoxins is if you're having a current exposure, you have to know that and you have to fix it because, it doesn't do you much good to intervene and get those mycotoxins out of your system if you have ongoing exposure. So doing an ERMI test, for example, having someone come and look, inspect your property. Some states even have mold dogs who are trained to identify what structures have mold and where it is. It's fascinating to me. So yeah, that's the story. So definitely, Gina, read the blogs for this month. We're going to have, one came out on August 4th, one comes out today. So you can always join our mailing list too, and you're probably already on it, but those come out on the website twice a month, and then you also get an email that has been released. Okay, so that was a lot of information in 38 minutes. I hope you learned a little something. I hope it was fun. So don't forget to join me on September 19th for our next month's blog. And, watch your email. We do a monthly newsletter on the first of each month. Diane, words are my love language, lady, and you know how to do it. So Diane says, thank you so much for these webinars. You are priceless. I just always remember when my kid was little and how hard we fought for him and how many different places we went to get help. And, nobody did a thing. And I just swore back then that if I was ever in a place where I could make that be different for someone else, that I would do that. So that's really, even though Rowan is grown and off to college, it's still kind of the fire in my belly. So thank you for that. All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you learned a little something. I will see you next month on the 19th for our next webinar. All right. Have a great day. Thanks so much. Oh, Gina. Thank you, Dr. Sonia. I'm so glad you're passionate about our kids and teaching parents. Yeah. I look forward to seeing you, Gina. It's been a long time. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.